Willie is an now retired animation veteran whose first job was being an in-between artist on this film, Lady and the Tramp, which was the first animated feature in CinemaScope, or in layman's terms, widescreen.
As Jordan says, I was one of the fortunate ones that went to work for Disney in 1954, and my very first assignment was the iconic spaghetti kissing scene from Lady and the Tramp. And of course, I was one of a few hundred animators that worked on that movie, and I guess I have to say I was very proud and happy to have been involved. And like Jordan mentioned, it was the first Disney feature film that was being made in CinemaScope. So consequently, the drawing paper that was on our animation disc was quite oversized, and I guess in technical terms we would call it a 16 field paper, whereas normally with other animated productions and the disc that went on the light board, the actual cutout that was illuminated was what we would call 12 field. And so, but on a scene like the spaghetti kissing scene, I was focused on just the lady, and so we worked on a normal size paper. But some of the other scenes where Lady and the Tramp is walking along, and it was like a long pan shot, some of those setups were quite large, and so it was kind of an interesting introduction to my 50-year career in animation.
Yeah. So this of course the Lady and the Tramp began when one of Disney's animators kind of thought that he could create a story about a dog or something like that, but then kind of looked at the story and he was like, man, maybe it might be too sweet or something like that. And then all this other crazy stuff started to happen to Disney, and he eventually would return to the project in the post-war era. And he's like, considering that we might have a unique project about what the heck could we possibly do to make this a little more interesting. So they add in competition for getting the dog's attention. Lady being in competition with the baby of the couple that gets Lady, and a love interest, namely the Tramp of the title, who's in this movie, and that kind of created a certain dynamic as to a struggle with what a regular dog's life would be, and it was just released the same year he built a monument to himself, Disneyland. He opened it to the public and advertised it to so many people across the nation through television and ABC, and he took the setting of this film and put it into Main Street USA, and the setting of Main Street USA he put in this film. And it was mainly because it was inspired by the youth of him growing up in his childhood in the little town of Marceline, Missouri. He remembered that era fondly, the era of where the gas lamp was giving way to the electric lamp, and the horse cart was giving way to the automobile. He he knew he had to branch out, and he knew that after Peter Pan, and considering that the guy that he was working with Disneyland, and considering that there was a little that he was about to finish up a contract with RKO, and considering that RKO was just going down the tube just because of Howard Hughes just running it into the ground, making some weird, weird oddball exploit women type things. It's kind of weird, but dude was like, no, I think I don't want to be part of a failing company. I need more room to expand. I need to create Disneyland. I want it to be representative of the ideals of the American way, and even so, he created Disneyland in quite a record amount of time. But then after he managed to ditch RKO, this was the first animated feature he self-distributed. Disney would self-distribute their animated features from here on out, up to the latest one that they did recently, and Disney wanted to have a way to help other people reconnect with the childhood that he may have had, or the childhood that or reflect the child in all of us, that that's why he would want to create Disneyland. There's like a plaque on the front of Disneyland that was dedicated at the opening. All who come to this happy place, welcome, and the embodiment of the enlightenment of childhood, things like stuff like that. I can't like just memorize everything, but Disney obviously knew if he knew that America was really changing, because he couldn't just get back what he had with his childhood throughout all of America. He had to build a special place just to get that Lady and the Tramp type setting that he had in Disneyland, because America was going forward. It was about to change. People were now moving to a new place called the suburbs. People had disposable income that they could blow on places like Disneyland. People can now watch Disney in their own homes via the growing popularity of television. People can now see a new type of Disney film in the theater, mainly one in live action, such as 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And now America itself was changing too. The youth was the ones that were kids when their first set of Disney animated features came out. They were now adults, and more like teenagers. And teenagers were really starting to rise. Not only were they driving their own cars and owning their own cars, but also, much to the dismay of their parents, they were dancing to a new kind of music, rock and roll. And considering that this was direction that the country was taking, Disney felt like, if I could just recapture that, like you are now entering, when people enter Disneyland, you would be leaving the real world into a world of fantasy and yesterday and awesomeness of what you would get. And that's probably one reason why Disneyland was pretty doggone popular. So, and even so, curiously, he worked the same setting of Main Street USA into this film, Lady and the Tramp, as a way to say, we're kind of making this kind of a tie-in or something. I don't know, but it felt like the same. Felt like the same thing with Main Street USA and Disneyland, and the saying of wherever Lady and the Tramp is taking place, the Midwest town of the USA, in the turn of the century. That's the saying of this particular story. And Willie here worked on the animated film. One of the few people who remain that actually remember working on the animated film. So, if possible, you could tell us how you first became involved with Lady and the Tramp.
Well, I'm a San Franciscan, and when I finished college, most of my cohorts, they were all going on to like University of California, Berkeley, and Stanford, and San Francisco State, and they were all sort of getting into something rather substantial, like pre-med, in pharmacy school, in engineering, and a lot of the gals in our group, they were going into teaching. And I kind of felt like what I was going to get into was rather frivolous, and maybe I should do something a little more humanitarian. So I told my art teacher that I was looking into maybe studying medical illustrating. And he looked me straight in the eye, shook his head, and says, "No, you're going to go down to Hollywood and you're going to attend Chenard's Art Institute, which today is known as California Institute of the Arts, or CalArts." And so he wrote me a letter of introduction to the dean of Chenard's. And so with my student portfolio, I ventured down to Los Angeles, and I had my interview at Chenard's, and fortunately I was awarded a scholarship. And so I started my classes at Chenard's, but I thought to myself, I've heard and seen pictures, and I saw the movie Reluctant Dragon about the inside of the Disney studio, and I really would love to see the studio. I'm not looking to get hired, of course. I was just going to use my student portfolio as a ticket to see the studio. So I called, and lo and behold, they granted me an interview with personnel. So armed with my student portfolio, I ventured on to the Disney studio lot, and it was a month of June, and it was rather hot in Burbank, and around 3 o'clock in the afternoon when my appointment was, it must have been in the 90s, because I'm wearing my San Francisco best, like tweed slacks and a wool jacket, and I'm perspiring, and I'm carrying my heavy portfolio to the animation building. And as I entered the building, I was hit with this wonderful refrigerated air conditioning, and I thought, oh, this is wonderful. So I found my way to the elevator on the first floor, and I stepped into the elevator, and as the door was closing, it suddenly swung open, and standing before me was Walt Disney himself with an associate, and they were deep in conversation. But as they stepped into the elevator, Walt saw me cowering in the back of the elevator in the corner, and he gave me a polite nod. They both turned around, continued their conversation, and the elevator proceeded to go up. And that was the longest 4 flights on the elevator that I ever experienced. We finally got to the 4th floor, and Walt and his associate exited screen right. I went left to the personnel department, and then when I you know, came in to meet Mr. Sealing, who was the personnel. He got on the intercom and called and said, Mr. Ito's here for his interviews. So two gentlemen walked into the room, and one of them happened to be the production supervisor, and the other was a little Asian fellow named Iwo Takamoto, who was a key assistant animator on the Lady and the Tramp film. And so they took my portfolio, reviewed it, and then the production man, or rather the personnel manager, came out and said, well, thank you for coming in. Don't call us, we'll call you, of course. And so I thought, well, that's great. Now I have 4 years to prepare a real professional portfolio when I complete my schooling at Chenard's Art Institute. And so I went along happily that I got to see the inside of the studio. And so about 2 weeks later, I came home from my night class, and pinned to my door was a Western Union telegram. And of course, back in those days, a Western Union telegram either meant good news or bad news. And of course, being away from home, I sort of anticipated the worst, and so I gingerly opened up the telegram, and on the head it says from Walt Disney Production, and then Mr. Sealing invited me to come in the following Monday to take a test, which I did. So that Monday morning, I reported to the studio, and I went to the production manager, and he assigned me a desk, and I sat there, and he gave me about 8 different model sheets of different Disney characters like Cinderella, Alice, and mixed with the standard characters like Donald, Goofy, and Mickey. And so I spent the morning drawing these characters, and then upon completion, it happened to be lunchtime, so I took my lunch break, came back at 1 o'clock, and the production manager came to me and says that he liked my test, and I passed the test, and that I will be hired. And I was totally blown away, because I myself felt my portfolio was far from professional enough to be hired. And so he told me that I will be starting in the lady unit. Of course, at that time, I had no idea that there was a film named Lady and the Tramp in production. So when he says I was going to be in the lady unit, that meant possibly the ink and paint department, which is made up of all ladies. And so I thought that might be an entry level for newcomers to start in the ink and paint department. But as it turns out, it was Lady of Lady and the Tramp, of course. And so I reported to the gentleman that reviewed my portfolio, the Asian fellow named Iwo Takamoto. And so under his guidance, I started, and the very first scene I was assigned to work on was the iconic spaghetti kissing scene. And so that's how my Walt Disney Studio production career began.
Ooh, you're holding up wait. Oh, yeah, there we go. Wait.
Aww.
You can see it. But it's like
It's Lady in the Tramp and a
wait,
heart.
is that one of yours? Because I think you have a little blue filter on your uh on your camera, Willie.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If you hold it in front of your face for a second, it will probably focus on it. There we go. We can see it. That's cute. Aww.
Very first thing that I was assigned to work on, and I had no idea how iconic that thing will eventually be. And
How cool. And at 19, that's so young.
Yeah. I was also told through various sources online that 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 originally that spaghetti kiss wasn't going to be in the movie, but Frank Thomas, who was the supervising animator on the scene or shot or something like that, he lobbied hard this this was a very special moment, and Disney was like, okay, okay, we'll probably keep it in because he wasn't really afraid to spend money because it was often documented that Walt Disney was the crazy one, and Roy Disney, his brother, often had to figure out a way to drum up the money just to get something going. And turns out that scene has become so iconic over the years. It's probably one of the greatest cinematic kisses ever because you start to look at that scene and they chew, and the moment that their muscles meet and they get so stunned like that, it's like cinematic perfection. It's like
oh yes,
it's like something just goes off, and the audience realizes these two, they were meant to be. This
oh
is something
yeah.
will work. This is stuff. This is gonna work. This is what we root for. You root for them for the rest of the movie just to be together, and then you kind of have a little hard time with their little breakup, and then then there was then they you get happy when they end up getting into the when they happen to get together. You get real happy. So it is probably
Right.
yeah. So it is probably the closest thing Disney has really made to a Hallmark Christmas movie, and believe me, it's only like a Christmas at the end, at the beginning and the end of the movie.
Right.
The opening of the game of Lady in the Box, that actually happened with Walt Disney giving a chow to his wife Lillian, and I
Right.
already talked about that in one of the episodes of the Disney 100th series, and
Yeah.
so and people might not think animation's for cinema. Guillermo del Toro, he says that animation is cinema, and if you look at that moment where a lady and the tramp they end up kissing over spaghetti, and it
Yeah.
just that is a truly cinematic moment. I mean,
Oh,
I don't
of
know,
course it.
yeah. So I want,
Yeah. I guess if you go on the internet or Google Willie Ito the Kiss, they did a documentary about my about that particular scene and my involvement, which was run on ABC
ABC.
network,
Mhm.
uh, the KABC, which is the ABC affiliate local station. And so any fans of the Lady and the Tramp in that particular scene could Google Willie Ito and the Kiss and be able to see that little special. Now, of course, I worked on other scenes in the film, and one of the other, you might say, somewhat memorable scene is where Lady finds out that her mistress is going to have a baby, and then Lady asks, "Baby, what's a baby?" And so that's one of the other scenes that I worked on. And but like Jordan was saying about Disneyland, in 1954, when I was working there, Walt Disney Studio was just teeming with activity because Sleeping Beauty was now being planned as the next feature that was going into production. So many of the top animators were completed with Lady and the Tramp and was now working on Sleeping Beauty. And then meanwhile, in one of the Disney's largest soundstage that has the floor opens up and it's a tank, and they were shooting 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and this was before CGI, so you had a hydraulically operated giant squid that was fighting Kirk Douglas, who is standing on a cutaway view of a life-size Nautilus submarine, and the wind machine was blowing, causing the water to make waves. And then they had off stage, they had guys with hoses that was also, making Kirk Douglas as wet as can be. It was quite a scene. It was one of the epic scenes from the film, and a fellow named John Hench, who was one of the innovators, I guess you might call, of the Disneyland, designed the hydraulics and got an Academy Award that year for the best special effects. But meanwhile, John Hench and a crew of Disneyland artists were up in the fourth floor office, and I think that's where Walt was heading for when I encountered him in the elevator, and it was known as WED Enterprises, WED, which stands for Walter Elias Disney. And today, that department is now known as Disney Imagineering. And they were the very forerunners of the group that spun off of the studio and went to Glendale on their own campus, and that's where they developed the future Walt Disney World and all of the other theme parks around the world. But at that time, WED Enterprises was still on the studio lot, so we could go and visit the back workshop, and I was privy to see the original Dumbo ride, the fiberglass Dumbos that were being made and painted and stacked up in the back workshops. Walt had his train set up in the back lot, and you go over to the sign shop and you could see them painting up all the different signs that you would see around Disneyland. And so that was rather exciting to be able to see the early stages of Disneyland in production. And of course, we weren't really told where the location of the park was going to be. It was rather top secret. And so there was a lot of speculations around the studio that it might be in the valley, San Fernando Valley, or somewhere near the Van Nuys Airport, where they had a lot of open land. And then right across from the Disney studio lot we had what we call the Riverside parking lot. And today, that's where the big corporate ABC building and the Disney feature animation building is. But at the time Disneyland was being planned, Walt always foresaw Disneyland as forever growing, and so the Riverside lot would have been too small if Disneyland happened to be built there. So Walt needed a lot of space. And of course, back then, Anaheim was all farmland, strawberry fields, and because it was in Orange County, it was orange orchards and just open land. And so, of course, Disney bought enough acreage for Disneyland, and it was miraculous how in a year's time this whole Magic Kingdom was built. Now, when word got out back in 53, 54, that Walt was going to build an amusement park, it conjured up images of like Coney Island or like the Long Beach Pike or Santa Monica Pier, like boardwalks strewn with cigarette butts and sailors walking around looking at the bathing beauties and whatever. And so we all kind of thought, my goodness, an amusement park, and that doesn't seem to really fit the Walt's image. But then, needless to say, Disneyland is such a pristine, neat, clean place, and of course now the word theme park was coined, and so Walt's amusement parks are now known as theme parks. And of course, needless to say, other companies jumped on the same idea, like Universal and
Six Flags and Knott's Berry Farm and stuff like that.
I'm sorry?
Universal, Six Flags, Cedar Point, Knott's Berry Farm, those companies.
Yeah. Well, to give Knott's Berry Farm the proper credit, they were the first theme park in Southern California. Mm-hmm. They were there before Disneyland, so we have to give credit where credit's due. But Universal really jumped on the idea. They pirated away, a number of Disney Imagineers. One of them, his name was Harper Goff, and he was one of the early WED Enterprise people that eventually ended up at Universal.
Yeah, it's pretty neat to think about that unique history. As a matter of fact, when Disneyland opened, the castle that you see that's currently there still today, which in itself is a monument, it's Sleeping Beauty's castle. And he only did this in anticipation of the next feature that he was gonna put out, Sleeping Beauty. He kind of thought that Sleeping Beauty would be so good that it would get people going to the parks. It would get people going to see this awesome animated film about awesome, based on a classic fairy tale or something like that. And he was like, okay, I'll make sure that this I'll make sure I'll put the best in the Sleeping Beauty. And apparently as I've in our first attempt to do the call, it turns out what ended up happening is that Sleeping Beauty suddenly got put on hold, and then he kind of got a notification saying, hey, Sleeping Beauty's on hold. We're kind of gonna do a sub layoff of some of these animators, assistant animators or whatever, and because it wasn't quite ready, and so you ended up getting laid off. But then all of a sudden, you decide, okay, if Disney is not going to, if Disney wants me back, I'll have to be back on certain terms or something like that. So you ended up leaving Disney for other companies, and the first of which was Warner Brothers, where you worked at the legendary Termite Terrace place where they made all the Looney Tunes shorts, and believe me, and one of them that you worked on is the classic What's Opera Doc, and in turn just kept on going for at least 50 years. Yet the only reason why Disney ended up having you again was not because of being a supervisor on going into Saturday morning cartoons later on, but then Roy thought, if we're going to go into television animation, we gotta have our own characters, proprietary characters, not just some made up stuff. So they made Chip and Dale, DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, Tailspin, that sort of thing, and then later on, approaching the end of your career, what ended up happening was when Disney started going into merchandising themselves in retail, they needed some artists in order to draw all of Disney characters. And what you did was that you were brought on as an artist, a senior artist, to help train some of these younger artists how to draw the Disney characters so that they would look good in the stores on retail.
Right. Yeah, because now we had Disney offices all over the world, especially places that had Disneyland, like in France, we had Euro Disneyland, which is now known as Disneyland Paris. And of course, in Tokyo, we had the Tokyo Disneyland, and now with the Disney Seas. So we had Disney corporate offices in these countries, but they also had character artists and designers from local art schools and all. And so I was part of a task force that was sent to all these different offices around the world to work with their local artists to help train them and mentor them. So it was quite an experience. And then before we knew it, we had over 800 Disney stores all over the world. And so now, a lot of the merchandise at the Disney stores was sent from here, but they also needed to create their own spin on the Disney characters to appeal to their local markets. And so before they went too far into it and losing the original integrity of the Disney characters, we were sent to work with the local artists so they won't get too far away from the original Disney characters. And then, of course, whenever new features came out, such as Little Mermaid and Lion King and Hunchback, we would send a lot of the updated material from feature animation so their artists could work and again stay on model and all. So they did a tremendous job of keeping the Disney characters looking like it came right out of Burbank.
Yeah, of course. There are some unique ways that they could add their own flair. And one of the most notable is with these Japanese artists, they were able to create some kawaii or anime versions of the Disney characters, and that's probably one of the reasons why you would search kawaii Disney character or kawaii Mickey Mouse, and you'll be able to get some results. The anime art style has grown super popular over the years. It's grown big. Netflix has anime. Other companies have anime. Crunchyroll, High Dive, Toei Animation, Toho, or a spinoff or something like that, and Bandai Namco. All these great Japanese companies that have provided an arms race of Japanese competition to American animation and other places and other countries who had the similar ways of trying to create animation compared with Disney. Though my friend Russell told me that he tells me that that the creator of Astro Boy saw Mickey Mouse cartoons as a little kid and was inspired to create animated cartoons in Japan. Of course, there wasn't really that much of an animation industry in Japan back then, so they must have really had to invent it, or at least create something the way that would work. And so just to let you know, some people, whatever you feel about this movie, some people might not feel 100% great about it, but then, as for me, I feel great that this movie exists. I mean, it feels like an ever real struggle of rejection or trying to survive or thinking that or trying to find a certain purpose. I don't know. It feels like just the struggles that a normal dog would go through. But in some cases, it also applies to people, because even humans have to struggle with rejection and survival and prevent themselves from being such a the Tramp basically reforms himself, where he's not so much of a rascally scoundrel, being a bad guy, where it feels like everyone's all on the run, and he's like some criminal outlaw or something like that. And at the end, he becomes a changed man, more of someone that you can really trust. And I believe anyone can change. And another thing I want to let you know is also to let the audience know, Um, the reason why Trusty and Jock are having a hard time telling Lady about the baby at first is I is back then in movies. Well, not only because of their character, but also back then in movies and on TV, you weren't allowed to say the word pregnant, and any discussion of sexual intercourse or visual depiction of sexual intercourse was strictly prohibited. This was still in the days of the Hays Code, and Walt Disney still had to abide by that because he was like the all endearing family brand.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and that's and this and considering that you couldn't do what I was trying to talk to you about on TV back then. This is the reason why you have couples sleeping in separate beds on old TV shows, hence the reason why Lucy and Ricky Ricardo are sleeping in separate beds on I Love Lucy.
Oh, how silly it was back then.
Yeah. Well, it might have been an odd but even so, America itself was officially changing. Um, and some people might think of Walt Disney may have been one of the benefactors of the 1950s that tried to paint the 50s along with the other people in Hollywood. They thought they could try to paint the 50s as this happy-go-lucky, idyllic, all-American time. Things like Father Knows Best or Leave It to Beaver or Dennis the Menace, shows on TV that depicted such frivolity in a sense. Though I can tell you that it wasn't really... there was a real discourse and unsettlement with the teenagers getting into rock and roll, and now all of a sudden, the same year that this came out, something would happen that would spark a whole movement. A woman named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama, on a bus, and before that there was this Emmett Till character that. And if you're not really sure what I'm getting at here, it was the birth of the civil rights movement. That it started in 1955, the same year that Disneyland opened, and Disney seemed to be rather ignorant or something like that. They might have thought that it would be a good idea that they would just keep their classic family brand or not particularly be knowledgeable of the culture that was outside of what was going on at the Disney studio or Disneyland. So it just kept plugging away, and they knew they were gonna go big with the animated features because they had to have a reason to get people to get out of their homes. Streaming, well, no. Television was eating up movie audiences, and much like streaming is today, and they had to provide an experience outside of television. Hence the reason why 20th Century Fox created CinemaScope and then licensed out to other studios, Disney included, and yet Disney felt like, you know what, CinemaScope might not be good enough for the next feature. We're probably going to go even bigger for Sleeping Beauty. We're probably going to make this epic. And that would cost them pretty dearly. So, next week, Disney creates a mouthful of a kind of a format feature. The first animated feature in Super Technorama 70. Or let me just say it was the first feature in IMAX.
Oh, okay. That would be, yeah, that's interesting. A lot of the film technologies, you know, you might say sort of followed, and then of course, you know, when 3D came back again, you know, with the House of Wax and some of the early versions of 3D.
Yeah.
That was kind of exciting, and then of course the cartoon studios made a few 3D animated shorts and all, but you know, different techniques and technologies, they seem to come and go. And like you mentioned the other day, Jordan, that you know, we don't get the benefits of the CinemaScope and Technorama type of things on television because you know, it's just you know, you see the what you call the scaled down screens and all to encompass the images that you know, CinemaScope you know, was able to capture. But yeah, so it's always interesting to see how different technologies will come and go, and something new will come up. And I used to go to a theater that had smell-o-vision, where they would pipe in different aromas, and so that was kind of weird. But yeah, so those are the days.
No, definitely. all the funny things they would do to get people away from television, and let me just tell you, when you watch Lady and the Tramp on Disney Plus today,
Yeah.
you would get the official letterbox version, the
Yeah,
widescreen
letterbox,
version.
right.
Yeah, that's but in the first home video releases, it was the following film has been formatted from its original version. It has been modified to fit your screen. I remember seeing stuff like that on the VHS
Yeah.
tapes when I was growing up and getting the VHS tapes from the library. Not too much from Blockbuster because the library was in itself free. I mean, because we knew how to save a good amount of money with when we got movies from the library rather than just going to Blockbuster all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So then the widescreen TVs come out, the ones that we have today, and now we are starting to see movies in their proper aspect ratio, though it wouldn't be like the same as getting an official 35 millimeter CinemaScope print or a 70 millimeter 65 millimeter ultra Panavision or whatever the heck you want to try to call it, super Technorama print. I mean, it's not quite the same. But then again, if you take the most recent example, Tom Cruise with Top Gun Maverick, he was like, guys, I'm going to put this film up on in IMAX. I dare to put this film in theaters, and I want people to see a lot of it in IMAX. And it paid off pretty well. He came out at just about the right time when we were all emerging from being all locked up, and then everyone would just went over to see that movie, and it was all wonderful, and even on home video, it still kept the immersive IMAX experience, and it even got a Best Picture nomination.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, Hollywood ever since the early days, even ever since television, they'll always they're always continuing to fight back against any kind of new technology or invention and stuff. And I believe right now it's well, streaming. Even though Hollywood studios are trying to make stuff with streaming,
Yeah.
streaming is kind of a challenge. But then again, so are video games. The video games are a challenge too because they compete for your interest. So that's why the hottest movie that's come out right now is the Super Mario Brothers movie, a movie that's based off a video game.
Oh, yeah, yeah, right. Yeah. I, a few years ago, um, I actually ended up now with three big screen television for 3D, and then I went out and bought all the different 3D movies and whatever, and and I've got all these Polaroid glasses laying around, but I haven't watched my 3D movies on my home TV for oh, 7, 8 years now. So I just got caught up in the novelty of having 3D TV at home, and so if anyone wants to buy a slightly used big screen TV in 3D, just give me a call.
That would be. Yeah, I bet you YouTube might get their hands on one of those things and might have to feel like, yeah, this TV shows 3D. I can picture the thumbnail right now on YouTube, and it'll be wild. So it's wonderful to hear from you, Willie, about your Disney experience, and
Well, thank you, George. I appreciate it very much.
and I would like I appreciate you coming to this Zoom call or audio call or phone call, and I look forward to talking with you again whenever the need arises and such.
Yeah, we've been so enjoying the last handful uh, of movie reviews we've done. All of the old school Disney movies all in a row in chronological order, and so it's been really fun for us to go back to the beginning, and now this is where we're at. We're in the Tramp, and so that's really cool to hear all of your experience with animation and worked through the field. And thank you so much for sharing. That was really cool to hear.
Yeah, anytime. I really appreciate it, and maybe I don't know, if anyone in your audience might be interested, but our local Southern California Disneyland fan club is having their yearly legendary award. And the next day, the big show and sale. Will be held in Anaheim, a few blocks down from Disneyland, and I will be one of the one of those honored, I guess you might say, as a legendary Disney, and so. It'll be held on May the 6th, which is the banquet, and then May the 7th, which is a Sunday, will be the big show and sale. So hope to see, any of the big Disneyland fans there and come over and say hello.
Yeah, I bet they will. They are getting used to having the Squidward mutation from the dark side. They're used to now living with that. And
Very
yeah, exactly. Willie Squidward mutation. Yeah.
to your audience, it was good talking to you guys. So, as we used to say at Warner Brothers, that's all, folks.
Okay. Okay, bye.